After court defeat, Trump implements new 10% worldwide tariff. India and Brazil partner on rare earths to bolster supply chain resilience. Slovakia ready to suspend electricity supplies to Ukraine on February 23 p.m. Israel could take entire Middle East U.S. envoy. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced a new 10% global tariff just hours after the Supreme Court struck down most of his previous sweeping trade duties. Trump called the ruling terrible and criticized the justices who ruled against him, describing them as fools. The court, in a 6-3 decision, found that the president had exceeded his authority. The case centered on tariffs Trump imposed last year on goods from nearly every country. Initially targeting Mexico, Canada, and China, the measures later expanded to dozens of trading partners under what he called Liberation Day. The administration had relied on the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, arguing it allowed the president to regulate trade during a national emergency. But the Supreme Court ruled that the law does not explicitly grant the power to impose broad tariffs. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote that when Congress delegates tariff authority, it does so clearly and with strict limits. He said Congress did not give the president open-ended power to impose sweeping import taxes. The ruling is seen as a major win for businesses in U.S. states that challenge the tariffs. It could open the door to billions of dollars in potential refunds, though Trump said any repayment would likely face years of legal battles. Despite the setback, Trump signaled he would use other legal tools to continue his trade policy. He maintains that tariffs encourage domestic investment and strengthen American manufacturing. The decision now adds fresh uncertainty to global trade as markets and governments wait to see how the administration moves forward. Brazil and India have signed a new agreement to strengthen cooperation on critical minerals and rare earths as New Delhi works to reduce its dependence on China. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva met Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi, where both leaders discussed expanding trade and investment ties. Prime Minister Modi described the minerals agreement as a major step toward building more resilient supply chains. China currently dominates the global mining and processing of rare earth and critical minerals. In recent months, Beijing has tightened export controls as the United States and other countries try to reduce reliance on Chinese supplies. Brazil holds the world's second-largest reserves of critical minerals after China. These resources are essential for electric vehicles, solar panels, smartphones, jet engines, and advanced defense systems. President Lula said increasing cooperation in renewable energy and critical minerals is central to the new agreement. Although few details of the deal have been released, demand for iron ore, where Brazil is the world's second-largest producer after Australia, has been rising in India due to rapid infrastructure and industrial growth. Experts say the agreement reflects India's broader push to diversify supply chains, following similar partnerships with the United States, France, and the European Union. The move signals deepening strategic ties between two of the world's largest emerging economies. Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico says Slovakia will suspend electricity supplies to Ukraine starting February 23 if oil transit through the Druzhba pipeline is not restored. In a post on social media, Fico said that if oil deliveries to Slovakia do not resume, he will instruct the national grid operator to halt electricity exports to Ukraine. He argued that Slovakia has suffered major economic damage from the disruption of oil and gas supplies. According to Fico, the suspension of gas deliveries caused losses of around €500 million, while the halt in oil transit created even greater financial and logistical strain. Fico also claimed that stabilizing Ukraine's energy system required significantly more Slovak electricity in January 2026 than during the entire previous year. The dispute centers on the Druzhba pipeline, which carries Russian oil through Ukraine to Slovakia and Hungary. Industry sources say oil flows have not resumed despite repairs at a key Ukrainian pumping station earlier this month. Hungary's Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó has accused Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky of blocking supplies to create political pressure ahead of elections. U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee said it would be fine if Israel took control of territory described in the Bible as stretching from the Nile River to the Euphrates, comments that quickly drew attention online. Huckabee made the remarks during an interview on the Tucker Carlson show, where the discussion focused on biblical texts and Israel's modern borders. Host Tucker Carlson read a passage from the book of Genesis describing land promised to Abraham and his descendants, a region that would extend far beyond Israel's current borders and include large parts of today's Middle East. When asked whether Israel therefore had a right to that land, Huckabee responded, "It would be fine if they took it all." Carlson pressed further, asking whether that interpretation would include countries like Jordan. Huckabee replied that Israel is not seeking to take over neighboring states. "They don't want to take it. They're not asking to take it over," he said. Huckabee later clarified that his earlier comment was hyperbolic and made in a theological context, not as a policy proposal. He emphasized that Israel's priority is security and survival, not territorial expansion, and said the discussion was about religious interpretation rather than political action.